Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, December the 30th. And welcome to our commentary one more day before the end of 2024, and I guess 2 more days before the beginning of 2025. We're going to be talking a lot about 2024 over the next week or so, looking back, and really more interesting looking ahead to what should be a very interesting 2025. And I think we got a little bit of a taste of it today when President Trump endorsed Speaker Johnson. And I think that's clearly a sign from President Johnson that he wants to get the team ready and the team to hit the ground and put aside or political differences. So I think with the endorsement of President Trump, that should be a pretty good sign that the speaker will be back, even if by a few numbers, but he'll have the numbers to get back, to say the least. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign that the president is committed to hitting the ground running, because he knows, I think, better than anyone what a difficult task he has in front of him. It's a doable task, but there are, to say the least, a few challenges. So we'll get into a lot of that over the next week or so as we chat with some of our friends like, Bill Katz and so on. We'll probably talk to Frank. We'll probably talk to our friend Barry Castleman, the Prairie editor up in Minnesota. We'll try to get as many different perspectives looking ahead to 2025. Well, the big story, of course, over the last 24 hours is the passing of former President Carter. I remember him quite well. And what's interesting to me is that he left the presidency 43 years ago, which means that you have to be 60 years old, or let's say in your late 50s, 55 or older, to probably remember much of it. We just don't have presidents who live that long or whose post-presidency is that long. I mean, President Ford went, I guess, about 30 years. President Reagan, I think he went about 20 years. President Bush, I believe about almost 20 years. But when you're talking about 43 years, I mean, that's a whole generation of people, maybe more than one, who are simply not going to remember your presidency. That's just reality. Nothing more than that. So my thoughts of President Carter, I'm going to divide it into two areas, and I've got a post coming out about this tomorrow. As far as a president is concerned, he was not a good one. In fact, I think, you can be very charitable and very nice without being too critical, especially at a time like this, or partisan. But he didn't succeed as a president. That's why he was defeated for re-election in a big way by President Reagan, or at the time, candidate Reagan. And the image that we've had all these years of President Carter is, frankly, an image of a good man, but not a very good president. And that's, I think, the image that people have. Now, he does get very high marks, and this is what I mentioned in my article. He does get very high marks for the work that he did after leaving the presidency. As a post-president, as an ex-president, whatever the right word is, he did a lot of good things. He worked with many countries, setting up elections like he did in Central America, other countries as well. He also did something marvelous. I mean, a tremendous project. He had a lot to do with Habitat for Humanity. In fact, he may have inspired who knows how many people to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. That was a project, I don't think he founded that, but having the former president work with that, seeing the former president of the United States and former First Lady out there, building homes and with a hammer and whatever, out there building homes, I think was a boost, a tremendous boost for the program of Habitat for Humanity. So I got to give him a lot of credit for that, because, he didn't need to do it. Sometimes former presidents, when they retire, they just kind of get away and, go on isolation and pretty much forget about politics or being involved in the public eye. Not President Carter. Now, he was not involved in politics. He wasn't doing a lot of campaigning. A part of that, to be honest, is the fact that I didn't think a lot of Democrats saw him as a political asset. So, nobody was really calling Jimmy Carter on the phone saying, hey, come over and campaign for us. So that's the first reality. But the other reality is that I think he wanted to get away from politics and do something different in his retirement. And he did, as I say, the work with Habitat for Humanity, working with other countries and setting up elections and counting votes. I thought that was very good work, and he should get a lot of credit for that. And there is something, too, about President Carter that a lot of Democrats don't want to remember. I wonder how many will even mention it in all of this talk in the media about him. And that is that he was pro-life. He was a strong critic of abortion. And I don't think you'll hear much about that in the coverage because it's not something that will come up probably. But he was a strong believer in life and was not an abortion supporter at all. And that is, he may have been the last of the Democrat candidates who was that way. It was not a big part of his personality, but it is something that we remember. So, again, his work as president 40 years ago, not good. But his post-presidency, the more recent work that he did, that I think has to be commended and saluted and respected. And he should get a lot of credit for that when they do the eulogies and when people talk about him. One of the interesting things about President Carter, too, looking back at his presidency, he had a little daughter back then, Amy. Amy was his daughter's name, Amy, a little girl, I think about 5 or 6. And she went to the public school in Washington, D.C. Very interesting. They sent her to the public school. And I can remember on the TV and the news, where they would drive little Amy to the local public school nearby. And she went to the public school over by the White House. That didn't happen with the others, whether it was Clinton, whether it was Obama. They sent their kids to private schools, but not Carter. He sent his little daughter to a public school in Washington, D.C., and he got credit for that. He should get credit for that. So anyway, so we remember a man who most people will have no recollection of, President Carter. As I say, 43 years ago, you would have to be, if you were a teenager back then, you're in your 60s now. And other than that, if you're 30, 35, 40 years old, you're not going to have any memory of him except maybe what you've read or what you have discussed with other people. So rest in peace, President Carter. And again, congratulations on some of the great work that he did with many charities and many things that he worked on. He should get a lot of credit for that. And I hope that he does when we hear the funeral and some of the other activities related to the funeral. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today talking about abortion and how the Democrats completely misread the country when it came to abortion. They were expecting a huge turnout from women supporting abortion. They were expecting a big wave of women voting to, as they say, protect their rights, defend their rights. But that didn't happen. And there's a very interesting story in Politico that I cite in my article where the person who wrote the story basically said, look, I think the days of expecting abortion to be a big issue for the Democrats are over. And, it's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because I think, as I write in my post, I think people got used to the idea of setting or voting for abortion at the state level. The beauty of overturning Roe v. Wade was that the public got engaged in the debate. For almost 50 years that we had Roe v. Wade, there was no public discussion of the issue. There was no way for the public to participate in the issue because we had this opinion that was the law of the land, as they used to say. And Roe v. Wade basically terminated any discussion of abortion. It also turned all of the Supreme Court nominations into nothing but arguments about abortion. It's pretty sad when you think about it. You go back to the nominations, starting with Robert Bork in 1983 or 87, all the way up to, you know, the latest couple of them, Republican nominations, that is, it was all about abortion. It was all about Roe v. Wade. It was, how are you going to vote with Roe v. Wade? Are you going to, you know, keep Roe v. Wade? Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore. We don't have to worry about that anymore. That's a credit to the system, because I think all those conversations about Roe v. Wade and abortion were very poisonous and very divisive, and I think people got pretty fed up with it. I did. I mean, what was done, for example, to the Judge Kavanaugh, and it was all about abortion, was pretty sick. So the Democrats clearly misread the country when it came to abortion, and that's why abortion was not the issue that they thought it was going to be. And as I write in my post, I think the public is pretty happy with the fact that they now decide at the state level, at the local level, what they want to do with abortion. And you're seeing differences in states. I mean, Texas, we have limits. New Mexico, they don't have any to speak of. And that's the way it should be. Everybody should figure it out and vote the way they want to vote on abortion. I want to leave you today with a happy birthday note. Happy number 89 to Sandy Koufax. Again, depending on what generation you're from, but Sandy Koufax was a great left-hander in the 1960s. Probably the greatest left-hander of the last 50 years or since the end of the war, without question. The man was unbelievable. He threw 4 no-hitters. He retired early because of arm injuries. But, I mean, there was a 6-year period from 1961, I think, to 1966, or 1960 to 1966, where the man was unhittable. I mean, he was unhittable. You couldn't touch him. And he was striking out huge numbers, very reminiscent of Nolan Ryan. And he was just unthinkable. If you could think of a left-handed Nolan Ryan, that's what Sandy Koufax was. I never got to see him play, but I did see him on TV a couple of times, and he was just unbelievable. Sandy Koufax, who was 89 years old today. How time flies. So good health and a very happy birthday to Sandy Koufax, who turns 89 today. What an amazing thing the calendar is. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.